So we started with the story of the Lopez Bakery, which really, obviously started in the Walker's Point neighborhood. And, the Lopez name kind of expanded into an empire around Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin. And your flagship store is now on Mitchell Street. So we wanted to talk about a little bit of Mitchell Street. I wanted to start, most of these are photos I've taken. I would say sort of the gates that welcome people into Mitchell Street from the east is the St. Stanislaus Church. Here's another view on a stormy day like today. So Mitchell Street, I'm just going to give like a really quick history of it. As Milwaukee saw a flood of immigrants come here in the century, the 1900s, it became the main street of the South Side. So you had a lot of Polish, Central and Eastern European immigrants coming to Milwaukee for industrial opportunity. And because Milwaukee's always been segregated, there were kind of downtowns in each part of town. So Mitchell Street was really the downtown of the South Side, where, when vaudeville was the way, Mitchell Street had something like 6 or 7 theaters on it. It had department stores when that was an innovation. It also had your bakeries, it had your, you'd go to your cobbler, there's a funeral home, and anything you'd need prior to the advent of a supermarket was on Mitchell Street. I think a really deep part of the Mitchell Street story is we found a story written in the 60s, a newspaper article about how Mitchell Street was in decline. Everyone always remembers Mitchell Street, the Mitchell Street they grew up with, as the real Mitchell Street. And what's there now is not quite that Mitchell Street. And Mitchell Street kind of created an identity for itself as the bridal district. It's had a lot of different identities over the years. I want to just bring you into St. Stan's real quick. They still do Latin Mass at St. Stan's. So there's some really deep traditions there, but there's also, here's St. Anthony's, which used to be the German church, which today does more mass in Spanish than anything else. This is after a mass lets out. All the paleteros selling paletas knew exactly where to go, where kids were hot and hungry and parents at least had a few dollars to spend. The Mitchell Street menswear is where a bunch of guys went after Goldman's was closed and Johnny Walker's was closed. These guys that knew about suits, and that now is closed after its proprietor passed away. There are new traditions being created on Mitchell Street. This is actually a celebration of CK. You can see it right beyond Nick's head here, a sculpture that CK made with patrons of the library during their artist residency at Mitchell Street Library. So there's a new library branch there that's beautiful, and a former department store. Mitchell Street also has, as loud and brash as Mitchell Street can be, it also is filled with hidden secrets. This is a rooftop garden on top of a building that's right on Mitchell Street. Here's a concerts there during the 4th of July. This is a mural that's just in an alley off Mitchell Street that Quinto Sol used for the backdrop of a music video that they made. There's kind of these hidden delights of Mitchell Street. Even if you go into some of the stores, the way they've been repurposed, this is in the AP Foods, which is sort of a play on the old-fashioned grocery store, the A&P, but AP stands for its owner, Amrit Patel, which is today, it's an Indian grocery store. Very, it still functions as a grocery store. And actually, I remember, Arijit, you told me this is probably the best place in town to get samosas. They have samosas in their refrigerators. This is a photo from a food truck that was once parked on Mitchell Street. So there are some that have, Mitchell Street has continued to be the home of all these different cultures. As it's progressed, its buildings have found new uses. Kunzel Manesser, which used to be a furniture store, today is filled with lofts, many of which have some of the coolest artists in the city living in them. This is the Schuster building, which again was a department store, also turned into lofts. Its first floor has one of my favorite spaces, I know CK, you love it too, the Mitchell Street Mall, a phenomenal, weird place. The Majeska Theater is still looking for a new use. These are pictures from a few years ago. The Majeska is a place where there was all kinds of memories created. Mitchell Street's constantly in flux. It's a place that there's sort of a swirl of culture that's happening all the time. Regent pointed this out to us once, that it's when you walk through some of the storefronts on Mitchell Street, it's like you fall, they're like wormholes sometimes, and you're in a totally different world. The glare's a little, this says Wisconsin Rican. This was a project on Mitchell Street that happened a few years ago named Temporary Resurfacing, where people did projections throughout the street. Artists, this is a public art project I was part of with Sonia Thompson here, who's a photographer, that we did called Listening to Mitchell, where we kind of wanted to just superimpose Mitchell Street onto Mitchell Street. The different images that we collected from people's memories and from around. Elvis. This is Amrit Patel holding a coconut in his store. These are pictures Sonia took. There's also a fur store on Mitchell Street. This is me wearing this is, I think, sable. This made me feel like an oligarch, and dreams of power started flooding my mind. I started thinking, why do I demonize luxury? This is at a resale shop that's now closed, but it was named Think Resale. And this was during a moment also Gerald L. Ignace, the Indian Wellness Center. These are some of the elders from the Wolf Group there. Mitchell Street at one point had a store representing every single inhabited continent on Earth, including Australia and indigenous people from North America. Yet, a lot of times Mitchell Street is trapped in an idea of its history, eluding it, when in fact it has a present and future that's really beautiful. And I just wanted to end, you know, sometimes there's lots of moods on Mitchell Street, sometimes it can feel gloomy, but sometimes the sun can shine on Mitchell Street. This is a picture of the Sun Fair, which no longer exists. This is the second year, I think, that it's, or maybe the third year. It was gone for a while, it came back. But the Sun Fair is a time when, was a time when the South Side flooded the street, Mitchell Street, to, I mean, it's surreal. Like, it just doesn't seem possible, yet it did happen. These are photos that I took. You know, there's kind of the traditional culture there. And then there's also all kinds of, I mean, who doesn't want to win a giant dog and fail 100 times and lose $100 while your girlfriend is telling you that you should try harder?
Adam, are you speaking from experience?
No, actually, my wife tried a few times. I knew this, but we watched this guy's girlfriend get more and more angry at this giant poop emoji. She was like, "I want that giant poop emoji stuffed animal."
CK and Rigid, what are your thoughts as you see Adam scroll through these images and we see these rich murals and community activity? Give us some of your thoughts about what you're seeing here, gentlemen.
Adam, can you go back to the second
image of the Sun Fair?
No, and the second image of your entire thing.
Oh, I will, but this is going to look ugly for a second. Of Lopez Bakery?
No, just the second image of the street. There was a street with there was nobody on the street, and
this one.
Yeah. So when you're showing me all these pictures, this is what I think of a city. A city is a complex dance. It's a dance between building, time, landscape, and in this case, there aren't any people, but you know there are people on the street, right? So I feel like when I go into Mitchell Street and I go along the street, the first thing that I'm looking at is towards the end.
Wait, Arijit, sorry, can you repeat the last couple sentences? You got cut off there.
No, I said like prospect is what this image is. You get to see certain views, vistas, right? If you go to the end of it and you're looking towards the Jones Island, you are standing in a point where Native Americans have stood looking at prospect of Milwaukee. I mean, we have erased a lot of their history. There are Native Americans around, but their history has been kind of systematically been built upon. But the prospect of Mitchell Street, standing itself and seeing the land and water, reminds me of that. And then I go back to the festivals and I see kind of an immediate event happening, the rhythm of the church bells, the smells and sounds, and then that instant festival that's happening. So for me, this is really a complex dance. And if you start thinking of it as different dancers coming together and engaging with each other, you begin to kind of unravel the mystery of a city slowly.
Absolutely. TK,
So I just it's a year in the Mitchell Street Library, which is a brand new library, and doing a lot of programming there that was food based. I liked what you said, Adam, that Arijit had mentioned, that walking through Mitchell Street, it's like a loophole or something. You get sucked into a new world. These pictures seem to make me nostalgic for being outside, sharing, and for being, also makes me wonder what Mitchell Street is going to be post this COVID moment that we're in. What is going to be, because clearly Mitchell Street has gone through so many transitions and through so many phases throughout history, and it makes me both excited for the future, because I think the people that are on Mitchell Street are very resilient, right? Because it's been built out of people leaving their homes. Immigrations are just born from a place of resiliency. So I'm excited to see what is going to come next for Mitchell Street, but also cautious, right, that a lot of the people that are on Mitchell Street might get displaced because of what's happening. So I'm just cautious, but also excited and optimistic of what the future of Mitchell Street holds.